Hey y'all, I hope you're having a great day. In today's video, we are creating high-end decor dupes on a dollar store budget. I hope you enjoy. Our first inspiration piece is this beaded frame photo collage ladder from Kirkland's. They are asking close to $60 for this. I think we can make this for far less. You'll start off with some garden stakes from Dollar General. You can get these for $1 each. They're about 3/4 of an inch square and they measure almost 35 inches right above that tip. You will need 4. I'm showing you 3 here, but you will need 4 of those. We're going to cut 2 of those down to 34 3/4 of an inch, which is right above the little tip at the bottom of the stake. Once you have those 2 cut, you're going to take the other 2 that you have and cut down 5 pieces at 8 inches long. Because these are garden stakes, the wood is extremely rough, so you'll want to go over each of your pieces and give them a really good sanding, especially the ends, making sure that they are as flat as possible. Using those 8-inch pieces, mark them from the left-hand side at 1 5/8 of an inch, as well as 6 3/8 of an inch. You'll do that for each of those boards. Make sure that your marks are in the center of each of the 3/4 inches of this board. Then we're going to take one of those, clamp it down to a piece of wood to protect our work surface, because we're going to use a 5/16 drill bit and drill all the way through that piece of wood. Try not to go through your work surface. You'll do that for all 5 of those 8-inch pieces. To make sure each of those holes we drilled are completely smoothed out, I'm going to go over all of those with some sandpaper to remove any of these splinters from the drill bit. So it should be looking like this. Each one of your holes are lined up in the correct position and you have those 2 longer stakes. Line your 2 longer pieces together and we're going to make a mark at 1 inch and then every 8 inches. So you'll have one at 1 inch, 9 inches, 17 inches, 25 inches, and 33 inches. Using that extra piece of garden stake that we cut off of the 4th one, I'm going to use that to line the 2 longer pieces together. Then you're going to take your 8-inch pieces and place them where you made those marks on each of those longer stakes. So you'll have one at 1 inch, the second one at 9 inches, the third one at 17 inches, the 4th one at 25 inches, and the last one at 33 inches. You're also going to need some larger clamps and some wood glue. I'm using Gorilla Wood glue. You want to put a very generous amount on each end and then place those with the holes on the sides at your marks that you made on your longer stakes. You'll do that for all 5 pieces, and then you'll want to go back and clamp those together to get a really good seal. If you don't have enough clamps to do all 5 pieces, you could just do 2 at a time, but allow your glue to thoroughly set up. I let mine set up for several hours and it is very sturdy. I'm going to go over all of that excess glue with some sandpaper to sand that off because I'm not going to be painting mine. I want to keep mine this natural color. You could go back and add some brad nails on the outside of your 8-inch pieces if you want to, but I find that this is pretty sturdy for the home decor piece that we are making. Because I'm not painting mine, I did erase all of those pencil marks and give it another really good sanding. We're going to use some of Dollar Tree's nautical rope. Now it has a lot of those furry pieces on it, so I'm very carefully going to take my lighter and singe most of those off. Now I'm doing this over a silicone mat. You just want to be extremely careful if you choose to do this. I'm going to do that for the entire rope. Then we're going to feed that through the holes on one side, and once you get to the end you want to leave a little bit of excess rope so that you'll be able to tie a knot. Get your knot really tight, and then you can cut the excess nautical rope off of the end. And then I like to add a little bit of hot glue at the end of that just to make sure that it doesn't unravel. Then you'll want to pull each of your pieces pretty tightly, and then at the other end you'll cut off and leave enough to tie another knot at that end, trying to get it as close to your wood piece as possible. And again, cut that excess off, hot glue a little bit at the end. Then we're going to flip it over and do the exact same thing on the other side. I found these absolutely beautiful beaded frames at Dollar Tree. They are the perfect color that match these garden stakes. So that is why I'm not going to paint mine, but you could certainly paint yours to match our inspiration piece. You'll need 4 of those. We're going to line up the beaded portion of the frame with the nautical rope, and to secure that in place, I am using some Gorilla Hot Glue. You just want to center it up inside of the square there and hold it in place before you go to the next section. You'll do that for all 4 frames, and once you have that final frame in place, this is how it should be looking. Everything is centered, and you are still able to access the backing where you can replace and change out your pictures. Now, if you want to reinforce it, you could add some staples over top of the nautical rope. Just be super careful not to make the staple come through the front of the frame. But I found that the Gorilla Glue holds up beautifully. Our next inspirational piece comes from Kirkland's. It is the white beaded wood picture frame, which is almost identical to the ones that you would find at Dollar Tree. Kirkland's, however, is asking almost $15 for theirs. I also wanted to show you this project just in case you decided to paint yours how it would look. I'm going to paint mine with a chalk paint in the color French Linen. This is made by Folk Art. It is a gorgeous color, and I am only applying a very thin coat. The frame itself does have some wood grain on the front, and I really wanted that to peek through. So once you have your entire piece covered on the front, another way to make sure that your piece looks high quality is to paint the back as well. Let that dry, and for $1.25 you have something very similar to what Kirkland's is selling for $15. Today's video is part of a collaboration with some of my dear friends here on YouTube. It is hosted by Mia. In today's collaboration, we have Sandra, Jenny, Mary, and myself. When you're finished watching my video, there will be a link to the playlist in my description box below for you to watch and see all of the projects that these talented ladies have made. Please let them know that I said hello. Our next inspiration piece is a faux pampas grass wall plaque from Kirkland's for $67.49. It has a beautiful gold beaded frame and a fabric background. I think we can make this for far less. We're using one of Dollar Tree's 11 by 14 photo frames. Remove everything from the inside. The frame itself does not have beads, but it does have these small pieces that kind of resemble beads on the front. We're going to give this one coat of a metallic antique gold paint made by Folk Art. Or you could spray paint it if you like. I only applied one coat and then set that to the side and allowed it to dry. Using the glass that came in the frame, I'm going to add an even layer of Mod Podge across the entire surface of one side. Then I'll set that to the side and allow it to dry. We are using some flour sacks that come in a pack of 2 at Dollar General. They are extremely large and fairly thin. I'm going to set this on a heating mat and iron out any of the creases from the packaging. Now that our Mod Podge on our glass frame has dried, don't worry about those outside edges. We'll clean those up in just a bit. We're going to set that on our heating mat and then set our flour sack on top of that. Then add a piece of parchment paper over the top to protect your iron, because once you place your iron on there, it's going to heat up that Mod Podge and you don't want that to get on your iron. Just slowly and carefully go over top of this to adhere the fabric to the glass. I always like to start in the center and work my way out. Make sure you get those edges to make sure that the fabric doesn't peel up later. Then you'll want to allow that to completely cool off. Then we're going to set this on a cutting board, flip it over, and using a utility knife, trim the excess fabric away. Just be really careful because you are cutting next to glass. This is also going to clean up those edges that had the extra Mod Podge. If you have a few strands, trim those down with your scissors. And if yours is like mine, I didn't get one of those top edges very well, so it was peeling back. Just sit this back on your heating mat, take your parchment paper, and gently go over it with the iron to seal that. Once it has cooled off and our frame is dry, you could reinsert this back into your frame and put your backing back in, and it would be absolutely gorgeous. Now, it was a little too stark white for me, so I decided to remove the glass and paint the fabric. I'm going to paint mine with a French linen chalk paint, but it would probably be better to use a much thinner paint by either watering this down or using an acrylic paint. Because chalk paint is very thick, it did get very thick in certain areas and it looked a bit streaky, but I am fine with that. I love the way it looks, but if you want a more even color, you would definitely want to thin that paint out. Now that everything has dried, we can put this back into our frame, and I think this color on the fabric is absolutely gorgeous against that gold frame. I'm using some pampas grass, and I believe this package came from Temu, but I'll try to find a link and leave it in the description box below of something very similar. This has several different kinds in it. I chose to use this one. The first thing you're going to want to do is shake it out and make sure that you get rid of any of those loose particles in there. And then I'm going to clean that mess up. We're going to set this next to our frame to see how much of the stems I need to cut off. And then I'll just cut those with my scissors. And to hold its shape, I'm using some hairspray. Just let that set for a minute, flip it over, and spray the back side. And this will really hold its shape, especially when you get ready to put this on your frame. So once it has dried, see, it's barely moving. Now we can set this on top of our fabric, and to hold it in place, I'm using some Gorilla Hot Glue on the stems. Let that set for a few minutes, and then I can turn this around and add just a streak of glue behind the grass itself, just to keep it from falling forward once you hang it up. And if you remember, Kirkland's was asking $67.49, and we made this for just a few dollars. Our inspiration for this project is a milk can metal vase at Kirkland's for $15.99. An antique farmhouse sells something similar in a set of 2 for $98. It has a gorgeous white background with a galvanized distressed finish to it. Now I have this metal milk can canister that my sister gave me that she's had for many years. She wasn't using it anymore, and it actually came with cookies in it. See the label here? Now the top is removable, so it is an actual canister, and although it has a gorgeous picture on it, I wanted to kind of lighten mine up and give it a different look. Now this label gave me a hard time removing it because it's been on there so long. I first started to heat it up with my hairdryer and it just wasn't budging. Then I sprayed goof off all over it, let that set for a minute, tried to scrape it off with my putty knife. All it was doing was removing the ink from the label. I tried sanding it, and then finally I just saturated it with water, let the water sit for a minute, and then scraped it with the putty knife. And it did take a little bit of time, and I kept adding water to it, but I was finally able to remove that stubborn label. Then I went back with some Dawn Power Wash and gave it a really good cleaning, making sure I removed any of that residual glue that was on there. Then rinsed it off with some plain water and made sure that I dried it very well to get ready for paint. So then I'm going to take this outside once it's dry and give this 2 coats of a high gloss white spray paint. So I just applied a very thin coat, let it set for about 15 minutes, and applied the second coat. And it gave it a beautiful, perfect base. Now it's time for us to create that distressed galvanized look. To do that, I'm going to use a paper plate, a piece of a sponge that was cut off of a bath sponge from Dollar Tree, a dry brush, and I started off with 2 different metallic gray paints. I end up only using one, and that is the metallic paint in the color Gunmetal Gray made by Folk Art. So using the brush, I'm going to dry brush around the rim at the very top. Then I'll move down to the handles. Then I'll get that rim right there where the lid is, as well as the rim at the very bottom. Using the brush, I added in some small spots here or there on the lid as well as around the canister, but for the larger portions, I'm going to be using that bath sponge. Lightly dab the sponge into the paint and then wipe most of it off by dabbing it onto the paper plate. Then you can gently dab it all along the bottom and the top, making it darker in some areas and lighter in others, and a little bit of paint goes a really long way. I continue to do this around the bottom and the top until I like the way that it looks. For some of the hard to reach areas with the sponge, I used the brush to blend that out right there where those little seams are, and then added a few more spots all throughout until I liked the way that it looked. Set it to the side, let it dry, and this project did not cost me any money because I already had all of the paint. The next project is actually inspired by 2 different pieces. This first piece from Kirkland's, a charcoal vase lamp for $104, as well as this composite lamp from Wayfair for $230. I previously made this lamp. It was my very first YouTube video 4 years ago. It is a lamp made out of a glass bottle. I will have that linked in my description box below if you guys want to see how I made it. Now, as much as we have enjoyed this lamp for the last 4 years, I wanted to give it an update from this faux marble look to better match the barn lamps that I have hanging up on my living room wall. The first thing I did was remove the lampshade as well as the piece that holds that on there, and then using painter's tape, taped all of the pieces that I did not want paint to get on, especially that light socket, the switch, as well as the cord on the back. Then I took this outside and I wanted to use this textured multicolored spray paint made by Rust-Oleum. It's black with like speckles of white. Because it's a little bit more expensive than just regular paint, I gave mine a base coat of a matte black paint that I already had on hand. That way I would use less of the textured paint. I actually let mine dry overnight to make sure it was completely cured. Then I added the textured spray paint. I went over this in different directions. I started off by going side to side, and then periodically I would go up and down because I wanted to make sure that the texture didn't just have lines going across it, it was all over the lamp. I did apply the first coat, and I'll show you here how much of a texture it leaves. It almost leaves like a pottery feel. And here you can see like the tiny speckles of white. I allowed the first coat to dry for about 15 to 20 minutes and then applied the second coat, allowed that to dry overnight before reassembling my lamp. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have a favorite, please let me know in the comment section below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. I hope that you will check out the playlist that I have in my description box. And if you are coming over from one of the other ladies' channel, welcome. I hope that you enjoy today's projects and will consider subscribing. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I'll see you guys next time.